final expense agents tend to be in such a rush. And I get it. I mean, I do. But if you can take a breath and slow down just a little bit, spend an extra 5 minutes. That's all it would take. It would be an extra 5 minutes. You would end up doing such a better job for your client, get more sales that stick, your persistency would be higher. And it would make such a difference. It would be like night and day.
Alrighty, so with very little prep and very little warm-up time, we're just going to hit record and talk because I think the best part is the kind of part that comes in the beginning of it anyway. Nick, welcome back. How's your week been? And are you excited to talk about the hotly contested topic of rural versus urban?
I am.
Awesome.
My week's been good. It's been unbelievably busy over here. I've still not finished decorating my office. I've got things that still needs to be hung up on the wall because I just haven't been able to find time. But yeah, things are good. Things are good. I'm very excited. Urban versus rural is it's a topic, that's for sure. We've had we've talked about this for maybe 15 seconds before we turned the camera on, which we don't normally do a ton of prep, but we usually do more than that. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun to flesh it out on recording and just let it kind of breathe and see where the conversation goes. Have we ever talked rural versus urban before?
Oh, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. Maybe on the insurance panel way back when, but I don't think so. If we did, it was like 2017. My thoughts have probably evolved.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part about putting things on the record and hopefully not getting called a hypocrite at some point, because opinions can evolve. Like experiences change you, life moves you physically from one spot to another. So I think this is the 2024, caption it like this, Adam, opinion of rural versus urban, if that sounds fair.
Yeah, I love that.
So I think it's important before you talk about any topic to kind of define said topic first, just so we're all on the same page. Even though it seems kind of self-explanatory. What is your definition of rural?
So for me, rural means farmland. I'm thinking there's maybe a 10 to 15 minute drive from one house to the next. Maybe people own horses and you have to watch out for signs of equine activity and assume the dangers of going onto that property. Maybe these people are farmers for a living. Maybe they own a large farm, or maybe they're just working a small plot of land, or they own a feed store or something like that. That is my definition of rural. I have that. I've got stuff not too far away, Berks County, Lancaster County, in between different areas. There's decidedly like cow farms and stuff, and like Amish farmers and not Amish farmers and big agrocorp and like tons of stuff. Yeah, that is my definition of rural. That might be a more extreme definition of rural than a lot of people are working with, though. I've always kind of wondered, are people really talking like suburban when they say rural? For the most part, I suspect a lot of people who say rural mean actually suburban.
Yeah, I think maybe we can put it into subcategories. I'm totally in agreement what you described being rural. And again, this is face-to-face. This is Medicare or final expense. It's kind of either way on this topic. I'm fine with that topic, that definition of rural. I'm also going to add in ultra rural. I did a rural experience, I guess we'll call it, in southern Louisiana during the apocalypse. Sure. And I kid you not, every appointment was 45 minutes to an hour apart. And it was all in the same parish, mind you, the same county parishes in Louisiana.
Right, sure.
It was just that far to go from here to here. And based on the geography and the water and the travel, that would be ultra rural.
Yeah, that is very extreme.
I spent time West Virginia, outside of Charlestown, Charleston, Charles. There's too many Charleses around here. Ultra rural. The phone didn't even work.
Ooh.
Like I had to ask directions to my next appointment. And not only did I have to ask for directions, but they actually knew who I was going to go see. So they knew how to give me directions there.
Right.
Ultra
They knew.
rural.
Yeah, they knew the neighbors. Not a lot of Wi-Fi hanging out in those areas,
None.
right? Like not a lot of like cell phone signal. Yeah.
There was
Uh,
parts to Louisiana I was doing paper SNL applications and Notability because ain't nothing else work.
yeah. 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 So that is rural. And especially for, I mean, listen, like if you're a face-to-face sales agent, those people are getting harder and harder to get on the phone. Uh, those are great people to go see if you are going to be working face to face because they're not working with somebody that they're not working with in person. But you do have to be prepared. You have to have like paper applications, which a lot of people don't have, even carry anymore. You have to have, especially on the Medicare side. Oof. I mean, I remember the days not that long ago. I mean, it feels like yesterday when you used to have to carry like big boxes of paper apps because there was no such thing as an electronic Medicare Advantage app. Those days are gone now, but it's not been that long. It's only been 3 or 4 years since those days have been gone. So, uh, and you can still get those enrollment kits. Like you should still get some of those enrollment kits. Have a few of them in the back of your car. Go see some people face to face where they can't get cell phone service.
They're not
And
getting flipped either. There's
yeah,
that shit still.
yeah, it's good stuff, right? And man, like some of my best clients have been farmers, like legitimate, like they own several hundred acres, sometimes 1,000 acres of land, and they go out and they plow and like sow seeds and own maybe a horse or two, but that horse is like a working horse. It's not like a
Hmm.
pet.
Not a pet.
Um,
Big
not a pet
difference.
horse. Yeah, it's a big difference. I also know some people who have pet horses, but it's a whole different thing.
A whole different kind of horse, mind you.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about suburban. I think there might be as much as we go into the ultra rural side where ain't nothing works and you
Yeah.
know who you're going to from one stop to the next. Define suburban for me.
I mean, suburban is anything where it's like it's houses, it's not apartments. For the most part, there's some apartments in the suburbs, but you're anywhere from like half an hour to 2 hours outside of a major urban city center. These people live in single family homes for the most part. They're not in like a big urban environment. Maybe it's a small town. Maybe they've got a main street, but um, they're not like a mile away from their neighbor. You could potentially like park your car and walk down the block and knock on everybody's door and go talk to 15 or 20 people in the course of an hour or two. Like that's sort of what I think of suburban. That is not the same to me as working in a rural environment. But it's also not an urban environment where, you're talking like very tightly packed in, and instead of talking to 15 or 20 people in an hour, you can talk to like 50 or 60 people in an
Mhm.
hour if you just went down the street, you know?
Would you say like a Brookhaven, Delco would be a suburban area?
Yeah, yeah. Brookhaven, Delco,
Bridensville.
um, yeah,
Bridensville would be more
Westchester,
rural, right?
yeah. Hmm?
Westchester. Yeah, I see suburban and Westchester, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
then the line between suburban and rural blurs pretty quickly the further out you go in some of these areas.
Yeah, some of these places, like, I have a client, I have a client in a place called Kennett Square,
Mhm.
which Kennett Square is decidedly a suburban area, but parts of it are also like giant mushroom farms. And so you also get that rural environment, especially right down there, right on the state line.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. We're
it
growing the
goes.
mushrooms right on the other side too in Maryland.
Oh yeah. So like it's a different thing. And I don't think the people you get are different. Not really. Not really. Um, the people's experiences are different. Their experience with other agents is different. How much time they've spent with other agents, how many times they've talked to other people about their insurance, how many times they've changed their plan. That stuff is all different. um but I don't think that the people themselves are all that different. I apologize as I try
Interesting.
and make noise in the background go away, which you guys may or may not be able to hear, but I'm going to try and
Interesting.
get rid of it.
Now, I'll take defining urban since I kind of made urban my specialty for a great portion of my career. I came out of the emergency services realm, paramedic in an urban environment. And working urban didn't seem all that strange to me. In fact, it was normal. It was the same area, the same people, the same streets. So I'm like, why would I do something different? This is all familiar territory to me. And the strategic advantages I find in urban would be things like all your appointments are 5, 3, 1 minute apart from each other. Sometimes you'll have multiple leads on the same street, multiple book of business clients in the same neighborhood, multiple people in the same building. I think the persistency may be slightly worse.
Yeah,
The plans might flip a little easier, but the reality is you're strategically able to see more people, which I think compensates for the lower persistency. It's
agreed.
difficult. It's difficult for me to come out into like rural Cecil County and book an appointment on the hour every hour for 9 hours straight. I probably don't get to all of them unless someone stands me up because the drive time is 20 and 30 minutes apart. Where on the flip side, in the urban environment, I might have a higher no-show ratio, but I'm still able to go to the next spot a lot quicker that it bounces out there. So maybe the short part of this discussion here is that rural and urban might become personal preferences, but you also have to be able to know how to work both because I don't think you can work just rural, especially with direct mail and digital marketing, your whole career.
No. And I think you're absolutely, and I really do. I think it comes into the population density thing. I think you're absolutely right. You're going to get more no-shows, and you're probably going to have slightly worse persistency in the urban areas, slightly worse persistency, not dramatically worse persistency. The bigger thing in the urban areas might be the way that they pay if you're selling a product that takes a monthly payment. Um, they might have different methods of paying in that situation, but I think for the most part, I really do believe that the people are pretty much the same, but it is a different way of having to work.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to a lot more time. The agents that I know that work exclusively rural areas, and there are some, and sometimes they have to because this is where they live. They live in a place where there's more rural than urban environment. If you live in
Mm-hmm.
Iowa, you're going to be running into a lot more rural than urban places. Not that urban doesn't exist, but there's a lot of state there, and it's a lot of farms, a lot of cornfields. Have you ever driven through Iowa? It's a long drive.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
drove out of Chicago once on the way to Oklahoma, and about 30 minutes out of Chicago, there's nothing. There's
yeah,
nothing until St. Louis, and then
yeah.
there's nothing again. Oh yeah.
And I know agents that work that area. I know agents that work that kind of northern Missouri area. I know there are agents that work that kind of southern Illinois area, and agents that work, western Kentucky and all over Iowa. And these people typically have to leave more time between appointments, even though their appointments themselves are not as long. But because they can pack fewer appointments into a day, they need to have more days of appointments. I think one of the things, we talked in the crossover episode recently about how like I don't leave the house if I don't have like 8 appointments on my calendar, which is true. And these days I'm mostly only in the field 1 day a week, but I can do that because I can run 10 appointments in like an 11-hour day.
Mhm.
Um, and that is largely because at this point I'm working almost exclusively an urban environment. And if I was working a lot of the more rural parts of my state, I couldn't do it. You just couldn't get 10 appointments into a day. Your day would be 14 hours long. You'd be dead.
Jeez, I get it. Yeah, after the ninth time slot, I'm that's it.
Yeah.
Physically, no, that's not physically hard. It's like mentally hard. I worked
Yeah.
the snack stand for Little League, one of my parental obligations with my son in Little League. That's physically a lot more challenging. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we lie to ourselves and tell ourselves the job is hard. When's the last
Right.
time you did a real job? This isn't one of them. It might be mentally challenging or exhausting or repetitive, but physically exhausting ain't what we do.
Yeah.
Um, but I agree. You
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
be strategic about the area and the time involved while making sure you still see enough people.
The other thing is in that very heavily rural environment, your upfront cost is going to be higher. Um, your cost for acquisition is going to be higher.
Okay.
Now, I think that might balance out. I think the lifetime value of the clients in those areas is also probably higher. I think the average premium is higher. I think the average persistency is higher, but the cost for acquisition is higher because it's a less target rich environment. You have fewer people. And so it costs more to get yourself in front of one of those people.
Yeah. I set
Um,
up
and,
a toolkit campaign for leads in my home county, and
mhm,
toolkit won't even let me do it unless I manually request it because there isn't enough people. And
right.
there isn't enough people, so they can't fulfill the digital lead order in enough time. They try to get them out within 3 to 7 days. I've had 4 leads in 4 days. Like there just isn't a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that's a little
If
bit different strategy too.
Yeah, and if you're doing digital leads, like if you've got a population of less than 50,000,
Hmm.
um, you're not you're really going to struggle like in terms of digital leads if your population is less than 50,000. And that's why so many of these lead companies that sell leads tell you that you have to buy leads in a 50-mile radius. And even if you're buying a 50-mile radius, you can't you can't have that just any 50-mile radius. It has to be a heavily populated 50-mile radius. So you can do 50 miles from city center of Philadelphia, but you probably could not do 50 miles from State College, Pennsylvania, right? Like you're just not gonna get enough people.
Yeah, but
This
then
is a very regionally heavy thing, but I just don't know
that's
very much
okay.
about the population and regions of other places.
Well, the
So
problem too with that, and I think the cool part about working directly with Toolkit and then telling the rest of the world we're willing to do this if you understand the downside to it, is I know that the campaign is going to take incredibly long time to fill, but I'm also okay with these local leads dripping in, me stockpiling these leads and making a day of it in my home area, and also blending them in with other direct mail. Like this
right,
is not the sole marketing concept. I wouldn't be able to survive on 3 leads a week. That would be madness.
right.
Um, but then you get into like a 50-mile radius, especially on the East Coast. You do a 50-mile radius in Philadelphia, and this is why I never did frequent Facebook leads. You're also now into New Jersey. You're crossing state lines, and you're maybe into Delaware. You
Mm,
might be into
yeah.
like the tip part. 50 miles from the center of Philadelphia puts you not in just Philadelphia, but all over the freaking place.
Yeah, no, you're going from Philadelphia to New Jersey and like all over New Jersey and down into Delaware and Maryland and up into Allentown and like you're
Doesn't
and
work.
probably out to Lancaster. 50 miles is probably not quite as I don't think it's all the way out to Lancaster. I think Lancaster's like 80 miles. But man, you're getting out there into the country
Doesn't work
too.
in the
Yeah.
field. Like that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're
Now
going
on
to
the
take three
upside, the
people a day.
population is all right there, so you probably won't be running 50 miles, but you could potentially be running 50 miles. Because but the population in Philadelphia is all like jam packed together. So
Yeah. You do a 50-mile lead order in Baltimore, you're crossing the bay at some point, I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
Like you do a radius around there, you have to cross a bridge to get to the other side of the shore. It's just really challenging. And that's why maybe this might be turned into a digital versus direct mail debate, but rural versus urban, you have to understand your marketing concepts just as much, which makes me want to progress into our next conversation. Um, and we'll start with the Medicare side of it. Regional, small carriers and big brand carriers when you're working a let's go rural first with a rural market. How do you
well,
intermix these?
man, so this is where a face-to-face agent has a decided advantage over like a telesales agent.
I so agree with that.
So like I was talking to somebody about Medicare, and I got a referral to somebody who moved to Pittsburgh. And they were saying that, they were moving to Pittsburgh and we'll use some names. They'd had a Humana plan when they moved to Pittsburgh. They were moving up from Florida. A friend of mine referred them to me. And they'd had a Humana plan and they were looking at the various plans that were available in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh has a couple of regional players that are actually like dominating the market in that area. That if you're not from the area, and Pittsburgh's far away, it's like I'm not from Pittsburgh, but I'm immersed enough in how Pennsylvania works that I'm aware that UPMC and Highmark dominate the Pittsburgh area. With Geisinger is kind of like number three, and you do have Aetna, and you have United Healthcare, and you have Humana, and you've got these other national carriers, and they still have good products, but they don't have the market penetration, boots on the ground market penetration, like billboards and signage, that these regional carriers have. They don't have the networks that some of these regional carriers have. And I can say to somebody, hey, listen, Highmark, you're never going to have a problem finding a doctor that takes Highmark.
Hmm.
You're just never going to have a problem finding a doctor that takes Highmark. And I know that, and I know that that's going to be true. And somebody who is based in California and has picked up all the national carriers and would never even think to contract with Highmark, because how do they know even Highmark exists? I mean, maybe they do, but
Exactly.
like, it only exists in Pennsylvania. It's only useful for when you're calling in Pennsylvania.
Exactly. But
It exists a little bit in West Virginia, but
strangely enough, that high mark becomes like the Delaware Blue in Delaware. It's the
yeah,
same carrier. Again, irrelevant to the YouTube environment, but
yeah,
this purely a regional discussion. Absolutely. I had a situation this week that you'd appreciate the regional debate. The lady had United Healthcare, great plan. Got plenty of people in the books for them. No hate for them at all.
yeah.
But she says to me, I wanted to have a back surgery, and my back surgeon doesn't take United Healthcare here in Maryland. And I was contemplating dropping and or going back to original Medicare just to have the surgery. But I was worried, what else would I lose? And that's a good consumer question to have.
It
In
is.
dropping what I have just to have that. And I sat there and didn't put my feet up. That wouldn't work in the trailer, and took a deep breath and slowed down, which I tend to seem to be more strategically helpful in a rural environment. And I just looked up the doctors, and I looked up the doctors on one of the regional players in that area, Alterwood, and every single doctor she gave me, it kept coming up in network, in network, in network. And this is kind of how I play out that if I'm really doing my job right Medicare presentation, and I keep showing them, all right, give me another doctor in network. Any questions now? Okay, every one of your doctors is in network. Because I've learned, and you would agree, they're more worried about that than how much dental they're getting, how many times they can get a pair of glasses, if they can use their flex card on their cable. If I can show them that all their doctors come up, everything else works a lot easier.
Yeah, the reality is you can get somebody to move because of dental, flex cards, give backs. You can get somebody to move
Oh yeah.
because of those, but you can't get them to be happy because of those. Those are things that sound good in the moment and will cause a person to change their plan, but then when their doctor is not in network with that plan, they are going to suddenly no longer care that they get an extra $500 of dental coverage.
Yeah. And ironically, that situation, the Ultrawood had better OTC than the United Healthcare did anyway, because of the deviations in QMB and the Medicaid levels, and this plan favored that. Man, you got really into the weeds with some of these Medicaid levels and plans that take this but not that.
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating.
Yeah. And sometimes these plans, like, I mean, not to go back to Highmark, we'll talk about Highmark a little bit. Like Highmark absorbed a company called Gateway, which Gateway w- was was Medicaid for people who were not 65 and over for years and years and years. So anybody who's been on Medicaid for a long time in Pennsylvania knows Gateway. They were their Medicaid insurance for years.
Mhm.
That's not that way anymore. 5, 6 years ago that changed, but Gateway also offers dual plans, and they have a partial dual plan too. So if you have any level of Medicaid, and that's all they don't do anything other than the duals and the partial duals. So if you have any level of Medicaid whatsoever, you can have these plans, and they're great plans. They're really, really great plans, and they've got a huge amount of name recognition for people in that dual market. And I mean, people talk about how there's no loyalty amongst dual consumers, but there is a tremendous amount of brand loyalty to these gateway plans that gets built up. That again, and again, if you're not here and you don't know that Gateway is not called Gateway anymore, and that Gateway is now called Highmark Whole Care.
Yeah.
And you would have no idea about that history that's happening here in the state. And there's an element that this gives face-to-face agents a real genuine advantage over somebody who's not local. And that is something that a face-to-face agent really can and should play up, because you have that ability to like leverage these regional carriers. You can also really develop relationships with these regional carriers. They're much smaller. They care like about you as an agent way more than the national carriers do. You know, you can call somebody at most, not all, they're not all well run, but at most of these regional carriers, you can call somebody and like talk to a real human being and then call them back in a few days, and the same real human being will answer the phone and remember who you are.
Hmm.
Right, like it's a different experience.
Yeah.
I really like regionals. And I think that if, especially if you're face to face, you should really leverage the value of that for your client base.
Yeah, you had an interesting question you texted me this week asking like Delaware Medicare, Maryland Medicare.
Yeah,
And for the longest time, we were like terrified of like writing Medicare in Maryland. I'm like, because it was like the lost frontier of sales. And
yeah,
you spend 6, 8 weeks and you understand where the big players fit. Once you understand where the big players fit, how to roll in the regional players to it. And it really doesn't become all that scarier than any other area with a little bit of experience.
yeah.
For those listening in the 25th minute, sales pro tip here. What tool do you like to use to look up somebody's Medicaid level?
Um, eh, I use Humana. I find Humana just works all the time. It breaks very infrequently.
Hmm.
I'm told that Aetna's Think Agent tool is actually pretty fantastic.
Hmm.
There might be better ways to do it. I am a creature of habit, and Humana's stuff just always works. Um, and I can't look stuff up in states that I'm not like licensed to sell in. So like I don't have Anthem, which I'm told Anthem's tool is great, but um, so what do you use?
Well, I don't know if it's the most efficient thing, and I don't know because it's only been 6 weeks, not 6 months. So I'm not going to make any broad persistency comments based on it. But I've been calling Cigna lately
Hmm.
because for the longest time, all of the things were broken because things
Mm,
got hacked
yep.
and you couldn't look up a whole lot of anything really. But I found Cigna to be 5 minutes or less. And in that 5 minutes, I take time to slow down, rapport, look up, show the person that I'm. And again, this is not long term strategically proven yet, but show effort, show that I'm talking, kind of like that third party in and up validation or the old school aptical phone call feel.
Mhm.
And they give out their information, they read the disclaimer, they put us on hold for 2 or 3 minutes, and they come back and they say the person's full dual, QMB, QMB plus, SLMB. And my acting side, I'm like, well, Nick, we're going to call, we're going to look up what level of Medicaid you have, we're going to make sure that you're getting everything based off of that level. There's like 7 different levels, and they're all very state dependent on what you're going to have. So I don't know. We're just going to check together and make sure that, and it seems to help.
Yeah.
It seems to lower the resistance level. It seems to be as helpful as I want it to be, but I think it's helpful for people to know you got to look up the Medicaid level first off.
Oh God,
You can't
yeah.
just assume
Please do.
everyone's full dual, and you got to understand your partial plans and when to use them,
Yeah.
and you have to understand how to look the crap up.
Yeah. Yeah. There's several steps. Everybody should be looking up. Like there's no, especially if you have like a search tool that can do it online for you very easily. Um, l- Maybe if you're going to be calling in to double check, I wouldn't do it. But like there's no reason not to check everybody every time.
Everybody.
You never know who's gonna. I mean, you could run it. There's just check. Like it takes no time, and the amount of things that you can get access to um, by just by just asking some of those questions and saying, "Hey, we're just going to check to see if you qualify for subsidies," and like the level of that kind of intangible trust building, right? The stuff that you can't fake, but will rapidly build a lot of trust is really important. And doing those types of things is really important. I was talking to a group of Medicare agents the other day who are Medicare First agents who are looking to sell more final expense
Ooh.
and are trying to sell more life insurance. And I told them that that was one of the major things that they should all be doing, is when they're talking to their dual eligible clients and they're saying, hey, are you, let's find out, like, let's check your dual level. One of the things that you should also be doing is saying, hey, let's make sure you're going to be able to maintain that dual level. Do you own any cash value life insurance? Do you own any life insurance whatsoever? Do you have money in checking or savings or CDs or stocks or bonds? Let's
Mhm.
find out what you have that might, maybe not today, but in the future, affect your levels, so that we can properly plan for that, which, one, is a thing you should just do. But two, if it turns out they've got life insurance, well, now you have an in to, after you've finished your Medicare sale and,
Review it.
come back to talk to them about something else on a different day. But then you have an opportunity to say, hey, by the way, I think you told me that you've got a policy with American Income Life and it's got cash value in it. And we should probably verify how much cash value it has in it, how much you're paying for it, and make sure it's not going to screw up your Medicaid in the future. And let's give American Income Life a call and find out some information. And maybe we can even save you some money and do a comparison. And these are good things to do. I think it's an easy thing to do. It's an easy way to get yourself some additional sales, but it's also a really good thing for your client, because the cash value will eventually, and not that long into the future, start screwing up their Medicaid. If they've got over $2,000 of cash value in their life insurance, it's going to start screwing up their Medicaid. If they've got $1,000 and they've got any money in savings at all, it's going to start screwing up their Medicaid. Like, be proactive
Yeah.
and, make an extra sale or two.
I also think that in the process of looking up their Medicaid level, either I'm using a tool or I'm calling Cigna, whatever method I feel inspired to do that week. I've also found it buys me time to be able to be more thorough with doctor lookups.
Mhm.
I know this sounds completely irrelevant to the final expense agent, but that's essentially Medicare underwriting. Like,
Mhm.
what level of Medicaid do they have, if any? What doctors do they have, and what plans are going to be a network based off their doctors?
Yep.
And that extra step and time I'm building into the presentation allows me to check this other stuff, because if they're going to disenroll, well, they'll never be enrolled if you enroll them in something they don't qualify for. They're going to disenroll if the doctor doesn't appear to be a network. And when they encounter someone who says, oh, we don't take this plan, they're going to push back a little bit when they saw you show it to them on your computer. Then they're going to understand, okay, maybe this lady at the front desk is incorrect. I'm not going to panic as much as someone who you kind of pushed your way through that sale too quick.
Yeah. And man, final expense agents tend to be in such a rush. And I get it. I mean, I do. I've been doing it for a decade. I understand why you're in that rush that you're in. But if you can take a breath and slow down just a little bit, spend an extra 5 minutes. That's all it would take. It would be an extra 5 minutes. You would end up doing such a better job for your client, get more sales that stick. Your persistency would be higher. It would just be, do what Chris just said. It'll take you an extra 5 minutes,
I
and it
employed
would make such a difference. It would be like night and day.
Yeah, I took that concept to light a lot since the first time you uttered those words, slow down. And a month or two ago, I probably made an additional $13,000 by slowing the F down just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
$13,000 more in revenue. That's not even counting like renewals and reoccurring revenue afterwards. Just by like taking a deep breath, slowing down just a little bit, and realizing you still can run an appointment every hour, hour and a half and see enough people and write
yeah,
enough business, but write better business.
yeah. It's not right. It's not spending an extra hour or 2 hours with your
Dear
clients.
God,
It's
no.
spending an extra 5 to 10 minutes, and that 5 to 10 minutes, maybe over the course of 10 hours, that extra 10 minutes over the course of 10 hours adds an hour and a half to your week. Um,
But if it adds
and
$13,000 more to your income, is that worth it?
yeah, it's absolutely worth it. And at the end of the day, you're not going to notice an extra hour and a half that you worked that week. Like, nobody notices when they work a difference between a 40-hour week and a 41 and a half hour week. Nobody notices that.
I use
Um,
I use this method too. I went out on a Friday, I think it was during AEP, and I said to myself, if my ass is going to be out here on a day I'm hardly ever out here due to other responsibilities, I for damn sure going to make sure this business sticks. Like,
yeah.
I am not coming out here taking time away from doing stuff like this, doing stuff for the agency, doing stuff for the family, doing stuff for my own mental health, and spending time in the field if I'm going to write crap business. So I took a
Yeah.
deep breath and literally went back to year one. Nick, what kind of insurance did we get today? Whole life. Perfect. How much is your insurance? $72. Perfect. How is it going to come? It's going to come in the mail in about a week or two. Perfect. That kind of like stickiness that gave me 93% persistency in that year because I was out there on a day I wouldn't normally be. I better get it right.
Yeah. If you're going to take the time and effort to write the business in the first place, you should take the time and effort to make sure that the business that you write is good business.
Yeah,
Like it just doesn't take that much more effort. Like it
a
just
little
that
bit.
teeny little bit of extra work. Make sure it's good business.
Speaking of bad business, our hot take for the day has to do with Globe Life and
Oh.
American Income Life.
Yeah, sure.
I find it interesting
Couldn't
that this
happen to an guys.
the reality is that all of these horror stories that I read them and I say to myself, well, of course, like that's completely believable for that to be happening. Are you shocked by any of the AIL horror stories that you read in this Fuzzy Panda report?
Man, I wish that I was shocked. Like I saw somebody post something in a Medicare group being like this is so bad for the industry. And I was like, "Man, I like yeah, it's not good. Like it's not good. It's bad for everybody. It's also like not it's kind of funny. But it's not good.
Ugh.
But like I sort of hate at how jaded I've become because I was not even a little bit surprised by any of
No,
this.
I mean, come on. Like I remember the first organization I worked with that taught me so much, provided me great training, decent companies to sell, a solid lead program, like the bedrock of why most people don't make it. But the deep underbelly of sexual harassment,
Yeah.
sexual assault, shit that what is that AIL didn't surprise me at all when I knew that kind of stuff happened elsewhere.
No, yeah. It's just it is unfortunate. And I've been on a campaign, and we've talked about this on the show before. Like I've been on a campaign that, we as agents, if you are watching this, it is up to you to help like make the industry better, to help like revitalize the image of the industry to the world. And I mean, that's all we can do. All we can do is go out and be good representatives of our industry and our business,
Mhm.
and be different and be an example a little bit out loud and call out bad behavior when it exists. And this is definitely bad behavior, and this is not good, and it's not okay, and it is bad for the industry. And also, it's not surprising, even a
At
little
all.
bit from an organization like that. And like, I don't know, maybe they're gonna sue us now because I've said that, but
No,
like, I
whatever.
don't know, man. It's just
Whatever.
not great.
I do you see Globe Life divesting itself from its AIL book, like its
Oh,
AIL affiliate? Like how does
I
it
don't
play
know,
into
because
the
Globe's got a lot to lose.
stadium? Yeah,
Globe lost 50% of their stock value yesterday.
it'll be back though.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. But like it did. Like they've
Yeah.
got a lot to lose.
There's some angry private equity investors in there and reinsurers that are like
Oh
having
yeah.
really annoying, really challenging meetings today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a disaster for them. And Globe as a company, like I don't think Globe as a company is a bad company. Like I don't like the products that they sell, but as an organization, they seem to be fine. They
Mhm.
build nice baseball stadiums. They but but the sub organizations that they have supported have been bad for a long time, and they're not the only ones, right? I'm not calling anybody else out, but there are other perfectly fine organizations that support sub organizations that are also like rotten to the core, and they're still supporting those sub organizations. And it is on that top of the hierarchy to not turn a blind eye, because that sub organization is insanely profitable.
Yeah, I do not. I would not be surprised to see wholesale full market change, knowing that the parent company with private equity and reinsurance companies and family lineage that's involved in some of the growth of companies that big is not going to put up with that kind of risk on their books forever. And if they have to clean house to make that happen and reorganize and redistribute and terminate products to be able to make that happen, like these people in corporate offices in high towered boardrooms don't understand a lot of that stuff that happens and why it happened and what it happened and the good behind. They're just, nope, that's done. Clean that up, terminate that. And they're not going to put up with that forever.
It's bad. So
on that note, that's a wrap on today's episode. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us if you're on a podcast platform. Comment below. The more you comment, the more it shows, because we're making continued organic growth. Nick, have you bought us a single subscriber to our channel? Have you paid for subs?
No. Hey, for no subs. If I was paying for subs, we'd have so many more subs.
None. I could assure you every single person that subscribed is a real person that gets something out of this video. So if you're watching the video, interact with the video so it can be shown to more people that need it and didn't even know it. Thanks for watching.
See ya.